Welcome to the Amazing Authorities Podcast, where game changers, visionaries, and category leaders share how they built their brands, platforms, and global influence. Your host is Mitch Carson, international speaker, media strategist, and creator of the Instant Authority System. If you're ready to learn from those who've done it and want to become the go-to expert in your space, you're in the right place.
You run one of the most exciting TEDx platforms in Brisbane, Australia. And I didn't say Brisbane. I know better because I've spent so much time in your country running myself over 200 events. I went for 2 years coast to coast in Australia. So welcome to the Amazing Authority. And you are an amazing authority. You're a speaker coach, and you're also a heavily backlogged TEDx organizer. How did you fall into becoming an organizer for TEDx, and one that is, let's say, high level TEDx?
So I did fall into it.
Okay.
I, like so many people, love TED Talks. And I apparently talked about them a little more than I realized. I was doing my first master's degree at the time. I have 3. And it was an executive MBA. And one of my peers came up to me and said, you know, those TED Talks that you talk about all the time? I'm like, She said, I've just heard they're having one live here in South Bank in Brisbane, a TEDx South Bank Women. And there's only 100 seats. You have to apply. You know, should we put in to go see one live? And I'm like, yes. And I thought about it afterwards. I thought, this is actually a little high risk for me because, first of all, I am a screaming introvert. It's important to know. So going out with the humans was, going to be a big thing. But the other thing was, I love TED Talks. They're wonderful and were so important to me. What if I went to a local event and it didn't hold up? Would that diminish my love of TED in some way? And I had nothing to worry about because the event was spectacular. And so the first year I was in the audience, the next year they asked me if I'd like to volunteer. So I said yes. Particularly in the time within 2 months of going to my first TEDx, I quit my job in corporate America. I decided, no, I need to change my life. This is what I want to do. I want to go and be one of these brave, amazing thought leaders standing on the stage talking about their work rather than the work I was doing. So they said, do you want to come and volunteer, having now that we've, mucked with your life and inspired you to quit? And I said, yes. And then the year after, the person who was running the event, an amazing woman called Laura Stokes, got the opportunity to do a maternity leave contract working for Richard Branson in London, which you say yes to.
Yes.
So she said, we had a team meeting last night. We talked about people who could potentially take over the license, and you were the one everybody agreed should come and do it. So I had about a week earlier, I just finished my second master's at that time, I think. I said to my husband, I'm going to take a break. I won't do anything crazy or radical with study or anything. I'll just focus on my new company and the family. And then I had to phone up and say, hi, what do you think about us taking over and running TEDx South Bank at the time? And he said, okay, because he's wonderful. So that's how I came to be doing it. And that was in 2015. And I've been running it ever since.
And how many speakers are on the day of the event?
It varies depending on the complexity and the length of the talks. As you may know, with TEDx, you can have up to 18 minutes. The vast majority of our talks, we don't offer 18-minute spots. That has to be a very long or complex idea to explain and keep an audience's attention for 18 minutes. Talks that typically resonate well, really land it, all killer, no filler, generally around 8 to 12 minutes. So if we've got a lot of short talks, we will have more. So we might have 20 speakers. In other years, there might be some more comprehensive talks, some more detailed talks. We might have 16. And to that, we add in that we have a musical act in each of our 4 sessions. So we have 4 90-minute sessions. They'll include multiple speakers, typically 4, maybe 5, plus a musical act. And we will also have in one of our sessions a 1-minute pitch competition, which we can talk about later if you like.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to throw myself under the bus here and tell you what happened with my TEDx journey. I mentioned before we started that I have one TEDx under my belt just because my students were asking me, have you done TEDx? Have you done? I thought, I'm a paid speaker. I do this professionally. And ideas worth sharing, I think, is the theme, isn't it? Ideas worth sharing.
It used to be ideas worth spreading, and it
Spreading.
had
Yeah.
been that for a long time. It recently, in the last 12 to 18 months, had a big change, which we're very excited about, which is it's now ideas change everything. Because for us, particularly from the TEDx community, a lot of people were talking about the fact that ideas are great. We love them. But what we're really excited about is the impact that they can have. And so we want to ensure that all ideas that are showcased on the stage are there because they have the potential to have significant impact. But
Well,
please
that's
continue.
great. Yes. So I was approached because I was running speaking trainings in Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, my markets still, but I don't run speaking trainings anymore. This is before the pandemic. And one of my students who came through said, I'm the TEDx. I'm friends with the organizer for TEDx IMU, which is a international medical university in Kuala Lumpur. And my friends are running it, and they want you to come apply. I said, apply or pay me? And they said, no, apply. I said, why would I do TEDx? He had to sell me on, I said, okay, I guess I'll put one in my quiver, but this runs against everything that I talk about how to get paid as a speaker, make money. I teach, or I taught some keynote people, but mostly about the art of selling and getting people to buy your courses and or products that you're pitching from the front of the room so they go to the back of the room. That was my magic and my specialty in the world of speaking. I don't teach keynoting so much. I didn't teach how to become an MC. There are people, I could mention the Australians that I know that I've shared the stage with that taught that. Peter Miller out of Sydney was teaching that. He now lives in Thailand. Peter I knew quite well. Those are all different specialties in the family of speaking. I said, well, I'm going to go speak for free. And he said, it would really be great if we had one professional. I said, okay. So I surrendered to that. Then I had to come and audition. So these were kids that were 21 through maybe 25 years old running the event. I thought, here I am. I'm in my 50s at this point, late 50s or mid to late 50s at that time. I've spoken in 63 countries. I've made millions of dollars selling from the stage, and I've got to impress and sell these college students. My ego had a challenge with that, but I complied, and they said, okay, here's your audition. It's 18 minutes. Don't go over. So I spoke very first time. I'm an extemporaneous speaker. I don't need to memorize much because just give me the content and I can spew it out. That's a high level skill that probably took 20 plus years being on stage to be able to do that. And a former pitchman on Home Shopping Network, I had all this background. And I said, I said, okay, I agreed on the topic, 17 minutes and 58 seconds. I delivered. They were impressed. I said, oh, yes, we definitely want you. I said, okay, good. Came to speak on my topic, and yeah, I'll get your opinion. I'm leading somewhere with this. Two of the speakers violated the agreement. One came out with cue cards, and she was in the back before she went out, and I said, you're not going to get on the TEDx site or the TED site using cue cards. Come up and do your best. Trust yourself and go do it. She said, I can't. And she went through the cards. Of course, she got excluded. Another man went 32 minutes instead of 18. And he was talking about pornography and sex. It was unbelievable where he went. He was a clinical psychologist and went down that path. Then I came up, spoke, delivered exactly as I did during the tryout, 17 minutes, 58 seconds. Then I don't know how much time there is, Juanita, between when you present. One camera was very poorly organized, poorly run. One camera shoot, not enough lighting. But nonetheless, it was what it was. I got my footage later. I said, when is it going to be available on the TEDx site? Oh, we'll let you know. 12 speakers, Only 9 got uploaded. I was one that didn't get uploaded. The guy that ran over didn't get uploaded, and the cue cards didn't get uploaded. I didn't get uploaded. They couldn't give me an answer why. I thought I did my job. It was decided by somebody in TEDx internally, whom I never got to speak to, made the unilateral decision not to include my content because it was too controversial. Here was my topic, and I'm curious what your reaction will be, because I'm very vocal about what got me into the speaking business. I'm a recovered alcoholic, 41 years clean and sober, and I talk about it. That's what got me into the speaking business, was that background. I said, is alcohol and drug addiction a disease or an excuse for bad behavior? That was my topic. And it's a controversial topic, or is it not? Is it a good hook? It was a medical university. The theme was out of the box thinking or something along those lines. I forgot, it was so long ago. And they had a strange topic, and I said, okay, this is what I can talk about with a high level of competency. So I delivered. It never got uploaded to the site. So I technically did a TEDx talk, but was never recognized. That's my TEDx story. How would you, what mistakes did the organizers make?
Oh, well, that I couldn't say because I couldn't speak to a specific thing where I was not involved. But I can tell you that some of the experiences that we've had with our TEDx speakers, so we very much don't shy away from controversy. So we are, as a TEDx event, are known for being like on the cusp. We're putting people on stages who have brilliant new ideas that are on the cusp. And so, they by nature can be controversial in their particular areas. We've had talks go up about, we had a talk that said, abortion is on nobody's bucket list. We had talks about the world first bioprinted 3D scaffold breast reconstruction. We've had talks about using incredibly bright and lurid t-shirt work shirts on construction sites to start conversations that prevent suicide. We have had talks about like you name it, we are there. We had talks about whether or not a new Australian research that's being done into whether or not an extract from an Australian native plant will have the potential to kill all 4 strains of dengue without damaging any mammalian cells. These are all on the cusp of, in their fields, what is happening. So as a result, we immediately and very often, we know in advance, we're going to get an email. So what happens after you submit as a TEDx? First of all, there are very rigorous content guidelines that you have to follow, and scientific is one of them, that, everything has to be incredibly meticulously backed up. So as part of our process, and we work with our speakers for months beforehand, they get us, we work collaboratively on the scripts. We get them early drafts, 4 or 5 months out, and we go to work. We are fact checking every line. If they want to say this, get me multiple peer-reviewed academic journals or fact checks for that, or government verified statistics. You have to prove everything you're going to say. And we gather all of these in anticipation, because we know now that when we submit our talks, and what happens is after you've got the recordings, you upload them to the international TED site, where they go through multiple stages of vetting to make sure they meet all of these wonderful and rigorous TEDx standards. And those standards are great in that they are encouraging us as curators and organizers to get better, to constantly strive to make sure the quality that we are putting out and the people we are putting on stage are great. But, so we will get those controversial topics, and we will have done the prep work in advance to go, here is everything that person said, and here is all the reasons they can say it. They didn't just come up with it themselves. Here are the facts that verify that. And it's a really detailed and really laborious process, but it's something you have to do. So we've had to do that with many. Sometimes it'll be almost instantly. We'll load a video and a talk and a description of why it's there, and we'll immediately get the email back that says, We need every reference. We need this. We need this person's bio. We need how you found them. We need why you decided that they were the absolute expert best speaker to speak on this particular topic. All of that kind of process to verify our protocol and our process. So there are lots of reasons that, generically speaking, a talk might not make it to stage. One is length, but mostly, in my experience, the things that get flagged for us to please explain or, enforce that we've done the right thing, is all about content verification. And then you'll just have sometimes some really bad things. And it doesn't sound like that was your situation, but sometimes you will do everything right. And then the people who are your video people will have a flood in their house and lose a hard drive that had your recordings on it. That has happened to us once in all of our years. And, I cried for a week, not for me, but for the speakers.
Sure.
And there is nothing I can do
Yeah.
to fix that. There is nothing I can do.
I've heard of an incident. Now, I'm sorry. I have to interject because this is important. Happened to a friend. He spoke at my event in Dubai. I brought speakers to Dubai to speak there, get on the news. It was one of my deliverables 10 years ago. His TEDx talk was lost just under the scenario you're talking about. What he did was he went back. They never knew the difference. The audience never did. He went back on the red circle, set it up again, reshot it as though there was a live audience, and then that got uploaded.
Yes. And there are certainly things that you can, there are certainly things that now you've learned over the years and go, here are some things I can do. And, we now have, we do a pre-mortem for every one of our events now. And, the first one is, what happens if there's a zombie apocalypse? Hilariously, we had never pre-COVID ever had global pandemic as one of our things to pre-mortem. What will we do if this happened?
Gosh.
But now we do. But every time anything, whether it's minute or a big deal, everything goes into our pre-mortem. So our event becomes increasingly sophisticated every year. And that certainly is the case globally. And you see people who maybe struggled in their first year. Maybe they really love TEDx, but they didn't necessarily in their team have people who had production management skills or event specific skills, or maybe they had no people who were, speech writers or curators. And so as their event grows in years and their team grows in sophistication, they become better.
So what do you think happened with mine? It was just one person's opinion subjectively disqualified me?
I wouldn't like to speculate, but I think that I imagine it would be quite rare that it would ever be one person's opinion or that it would be subjective. I imagine it would be, here is whether it's, I don't know if you're familiar or if you got a copy of the TEDx content guidelines. Maybe it was that, maybe it was something with the quality of the film, and maybe it was, usually if there's a single line, we've had talks before where we will send them the 23 references for what's said, but still we didn't have an adequate reference for a single sentence or a paragraph. And so we've had before we've had to remove a single sentence that we couldn't vet or substantiate to the satisfaction of the team, the editorial team, who are making sure that these talks are really high level. And as I say, it's because all of our talks are right on the cusp, pushing the button. So we've had to remove single sentences very rarely, but it's happened. And one of our talks went up, and because it was related to medical research, there is, a flag at the beginning that TED has placed, which says, please don't use this talk for making medical decisions. So there are a whole range of different processes in place to work out how to deal with a talk. TEDx organizers can decide not to upload a talk, but so it's really hard to know whether it was decided by somebody in the team or somebody there. There's multiple stages. And of course, if this was 7 years ago, TEDx has become increasingly sophisticated in terms of its processes for catching everything.
Yeah, it was 7, 8 years ago. I'd have to go back and look at the year, but it was a while ago, and I just let it go. I thought, okay, I can pursue this, but I never got a call. It was an email that took 6 weeks to get a response. Maybe they were overloaded or what have you, but it was very short. You didn't adhere to our guidelines. Okay. And the organizers disappeared. They went back to school. So it fell into my lap to find out why. And I was, I was a bit miffed about it, but that's all in the past. Who do you help today? You work as an organizer. They go through your boot camp, but I know organizers, you're not paid for that.
No, nobody who works on TEDx events is paid. So that is my, part-time / second full-time job that I do for love, because I'm about changing the world. But no, my company, which is called Full and Frank, because I am, is during my company work, I do exactly the same thing in that I am helping people throughout the world, whether or not they are in business or social enterprise or doing social work or work in government or they're researchers or authors, whatever it is. I help them champion their ideas to their target audience to persuade that audience to say yes to a strategic objective. So I'm not interested in public speaking that is about flapping your gums for the sake of just standing up and telling a story. I am all about persuasion and getting to yes.
So that is because I asked you before we began, are you a member of NSA? There are all these speaking associations. There's Toastmasters, which is popular, a close competitor today because I spoke at their first international conference in Portugal. Agora Speakers, I don't know if you've heard about them. They're around the world also. How does your work compare to those organizations that are the three that I mentioned?
I have a quite different and unique approach. So the reason that I got into public speaking and public speaking coaching specifically, is as a screaming introvert, I did not come to public speaking naturally.
Okay.
It was not my comfort area at all. I preferred everything to be done in writing. As a formerly qualified journalist, I'm sure you maybe have
I am a journalist
as
well background. Yes.
So I was writing proposals. I was working in multinational business. I was working in corporate. I had been the CEO of a nonprofit, but my joy was in writing. I felt that was my comfort zone. And what I was discovering over the years, and I was involved in, international mergers and acquisitions and distribution deals and the negotiations, and was very good at it. But what I was discovering was people don't necessarily like to read things. And that
True.
people are persuaded in the room, or at the water cooler or over dinner. And, I would put forward compelling presentations and proposals. But some guy, let's call him Chad, would get up and
Nice
just
name.
use his grade 12 speech and drama or glee club, and his substandard lackluster idea would get up. And I found this vexing. And for a little while I thought, well, that's just not appropriate and unfair. But that didn't help me at all. That wasn't helping anyone but Chad. So I went, okay, cool. I need to learn how to do this. But I knew that I went and grabbed a lot of books off shelves and looked into, videos and what people were doing. And what I found was a lot of, not everything, but most of what I found in the public speaking world was about how to try and hustle people, or, hoodwink them using body language, or what you should do with your vocal modulation, or how you should place your hands on stage. And that just did not resonate with me. And it was also talking a lot about vanity metrics, like getting applause, getting standing ovations. Don't get me wrong, I love standing ovations. But for me, that's not the goal. The goal is not the applause. The goal is the yes. Whether that's to investing in your company, buying your book, signing you up as an author, giving you a grant for your research, all of these things. I care about the yes. I don't care about the vanity things. And so a lot of the organizations and the books I was reading, they didn't sit with me. And they certainly didn't feel, they weren't, I'm a nerd. I like referencing. I want to know exactly where your ideas came from and why they're legitimate. And so I said, okay, this doesn't work for me. So I started going through and reading everything I could in terms of neuroscience, neuroeconomics, the neuroscience of decision making, what has been used in behavioral psychology, what's worked in advertising and has been, tested in focus groups and with dials and fRMI machines. I wanted to know the science of it and then go, excellent. I am now going to apply all of this in a combination and a framework that works just for me as the guinea pig. So I, as an introvert who cares about neuroscience, can be persuasive when I walk into a room and speak to somebody. And I tried all of these different things and I worked out a framework that works. And then it started getting traction, first for me, and then other people started noticing and saying, can you teach me how to do that? I need to know how to do that. And so that's how I really made the transition from the work I was doing, which was, very high level business management. I was at the point where I left corporate, I was the director of global marketing and market development for one of the 20 fastest growing biotech companies based out of the US, and walked away and said, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to focus on.
You picked your passion, found your purpose, and executed and make a profit in the process. That sounds like a winning formula.
Absolutely. And part of that is I truly believe that doing good is good for business. And there are so many great ideas out there that people have, whether they're researchers or it's a business idea or in a book, whatever. But there are so many great ideas that never make it outside of the cubicle or the shower because people are intimidated by the idea of finding their voice, and they don't understand how to do it strategically. So some people never get to the stage. Other people I work with a lot have been doing the stage for 10 plus years, and it's like they're on the treadmill. They're doing the work and they're showing up, but they don't know how to do it strategically. So they're not putting in the strategy work. So it's just that they're laboriously on this treadmill and getting nowhere. And typically it's because they're following those processes or those protocols or the methodologies that I saw when I first tried to work out how to be a good speaker, which is how to stand, what to do with your gestures in order to convince people, and what to do with your vocal modulation, as opposed to before you pick up a pen or open PowerPoint, let's get real about strategy.
I love it. That's a key distinction. We could talk for a long time, but I want to see where people can get in touch with you, because you've shared a lot, and I want you to get clients who resonate with your message. Maybe
I love getting clients.
Huh? Yeah. Well,
I love getting clients. I love helping people.
So Juanita, where they go? Full and Frank, or is it full ampersand Frank?
Well, it's an ampersand, but on the you can't use an ampersand on a web domain. So it's fullandfrank.com. And I will make sure you have a copy to it. I have a Linktree link, which is a great place because there are multiple free guides there. So it's a great place to start and suck it and see if I'm your kind of person. But guides there include how to get started in public speaking, and how to use public speaking to grow your business. Now, your business might be a brick and mortar store, it could be an online business. It could be the business of selling books if you're an author, or the business of getting grants if you're a researcher. So whatever your business is, there's a guide there. And then there are also all my latest podcast episodes will appear there, which will include this one.
Well, that's awesome. And I look forward to your Linktree. Juanita, you've been a great guest. I'm going to have you back where we're going to do a much bigger deep dive into TEDx, because I think that's what people want to hear about. And I will be reaching out soon. Thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Amazing Authorities Podcast. If today's episode inspired you, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps more experts like you rise to the top. For behind-the-scenes access and free resources to boost your authority, head to mitchcarson.com. Until next time, stay amazing.